We are at a huge turning point. More men now than ever feel left behind, emotionally isolated, and invisible in dating. Other areas of life too, but definitely in dating. When on the other hand, women are rising in power, ambition, and their standards, right? Which is beautiful. That's a great thing. But what happens when you have such a heavy contrast between men and women is disconnection, frustration, and even bitterness on both ends of the spectrum, right? So the truth is, this downfall, if you will, of the modern man is not a man versus woman problem. It's a relationship culture problem. Because ultimately, if either of us fails, right, men or women, we all fail. We all lose. Nobody wins. We need each other. So if we're ever going to heal this wound, we have to first be able to acknowledge that we all play a role in it. So right now, I want to break down what your role is in it, whether you're looking to date and have relationships with amazing men, or you're looking to have camaraderie with them. So before we jump into the roles people are playing in this epidemic, if you will, I want to give you some recent studies and research that's been done to give you some context as to the real life challenges, the most difficult ones men are facing in society when it comes to social isolation, when it comes to dating, and even emotional support. So let's talk about the social isolation and the loneliness first, real fast. A study from 2021 revealed that 15% of men reported having no close friends. Zilch. Versus in 1990, that report, I think that was the most recent one prior, showed that 3% of men said they didn't have close friends. So almost 4 times plus the amount of men today versus in 1990 are out here feeling isolated, right? Left to their own devices with no one to bounce things off of or no one to kind of, lock in with in certain ways to feel like they're not just floating alone. Now, I know this doesn't account for their family members they may have and things in their life and all that, right? But in a general sense, most of us goes to our peers first, to have someone to have camaraderie with and all those things, right? We turn to them, we talk to them about things. Heck, oftentimes we'll share things with that close friend or what have you that you wouldn't even share with a relative because maybe it's too private for you or you don't want it to get out amongst the family or whatever it is, right? So the point is, a lot of men in this position are now feeling like they are just lone wolves. Now let's talk the emotional disconnect. A study from 2023 found that the majority of men from older millennials to Gen Zers agree with the statement of no one really knows me well. But here's the kicker. The Gen Zers, right? They had the biggest numbers of their peers agreeing with that statement. And just for anyone that isn't aware, Gen Zers is roughly about ages 13 to 28. So your teenagers, right? All the way up to young men. They, even more so than millennials, feel like no one really knows them well. What is that screaming to you? They don't feel seen. And when they are seen on some level, they don't really feel heard. It's saying to you, no one's trying to put the effort into understanding them, right? It's saying to you, they don't feel there's a safe space to open up and do these things, most likely, right? It's saying to you that they are existing only in a world within their own minds and their own devices. And what are the health implications? Well, loneliness is proving to be widely recognized increasingly as the main health concern for men, right? And I think it's estimated that about 20% of adults in Europe are socially isolated. But that number is most likely a lot more prevalent because you have a lot of men that don't feel comfortable sharing and opening up to speak up or, reveal that in a study because they don't want to be judged or seen as weak and all these things. Now let's talk the dating and relationship challenges the modern man is facing. Did you know that in 2018, 28% of men ages 18 to 30 reported having no sexual activity across the past year, right? Versus 18% of women saying the same thing in the same age group. So 10% more men are not having sex versus women. Women are having more sex than men on the average everyday circumstance. I know, right? Because we always, talk about how men are just driven by sex and all they want is sex, and that's all they're out here doing is just having sex with people and with women and not trying to commit and all these different things, right? And sometimes a negative connotation can carry with all men because of the acts of the few. But you got to ask yourself, if it's a matter of, women statistically having more sexual encounters between that 18 to 30 age group than even their male counterparts, then who are they having sex with if they're having more and these men are not, right? Well, studies show that women are more selective in dating. For instance, a study done by OkCupid, right? For those of you that don't know, it's a dating app, right? That you can go on to find people and stuff. Reported that women rated 80% of the men on the app as below average in attractiveness. 80%. That's the most of the market that they have to choose from. So then who are these women having relations with and all these things? Well, research across all dating platforms, right, as a generalization for online dating, shows that the top 20% of men receive majority to almost all the attention from women, right? They get all the play, if you will. Now, am I saying that's wrong of women to only shoot for these 20%? Nah, not at all, right? You like what you want and all the things, but understand the dynamic that is now created to where there's only 20% of men right there for the 80% of women out there that want them. So now competition starts to become a real thing and goes to the roof now, right? To where you start finding women fighting over the same guy or trying to beat out, the other women to get this guy or whatever. You start finding women left in a position to be single more likely for longer, if not anything else, because all the good men are taken, kind of an idea. You start seeing that top 20% of men are having decision paralysis because now their options are beyond abundant. Now they're trying to, decide between who's the better fit for me. And it's a lot harder because they're getting, I guess, all the top tier of women out there, or whatever you want to call that, to where now it becomes much more challenging to choose that one for you because maybe you're getting the advantage of getting to have an experience with two amazing women that's hard to choose between when you're in the dating process. So it becomes hard to commit and to actually lock in or whatever the case is. The point is, what does this create for that 80% of men that are not being chosen? It creates that sense of disconnect. It creates that I'm not good enough space that they're in, right? It puts them in a position to feel, isolated from the dating experience. It makes them feel like this is a pointless game for me. I can't even win here. It's all rigged against me. That turns into depression. It turns into anger and all the loneliness and all the things that starts to create the body that is men as a whole in an overall experience that the average everyday woman comes across and encounters. And let's not even talk support groups or communities. They virtually don't exist for men, right? For the majority of men out there, they have no emotional support system. Versus with women, they're more abundant for women. You can find those everywhere. Heck, you can go on Eventbrite right now and look up, support group or, empowerment community or whatever. And 90 something percent to almost 100 are going to be women support focused groups and things like that. Right. So what does that mean? That means whenever it comes to going through breakups or having to go through something emotional, the space that men tend to like pigeonhole all of their emotional support and weight on is the woman in their life. And when they go through a breakup, it's a much more disastrous internal experience for the average guy because he doesn't have that support group to go to, right? He's out there on that island by himself trying to process emotions that he most likely never even learned how to process on his own. Whereas for women, that's a lot more plentiful. And let's give a little context too around this, right? Some of this makes sense. It's not like, oh, just poor boo-hoo the men. Like, well, why don't they just create these communities and things to support each other like women do and all these things, right? They can do it too, just like we do if you're a woman, watching this video. But I want to make sure it doesn't get lost and make sure we're on the same page here, right? There's definitely context and nuance to how anything comes to be. And I'll get to more of that in a moment. But just at a base level, it makes sense that women would have more support groups and so forth because women tend to sit more in the energy base that's built around connection and community and camaraderie and all the things being feminine energy. That's what its best thing is for. Nurture, embrace, warmth, union, right? Masculine energy is not great in that. Masculine energy is great in productivity, building, ambition, grit, being a protector, providing. That's what that energy base is most equipped for. So if you have a lot of men that maybe have not grown with or been taught to lean into those emotions and learn how to build that, especially in a society that is going more and more digital and in general isolating us even more and more, then it becomes worse and worse for them versus women will more easily naturally gravitate towards doing those things because it's a requirement for your energy base, right? But then the other piece of the equation goes into a lot of the societal setup of things, how things have just kind of progressed. And I always say this, right? As humans, we are horrible at proactivity. That's not one of our strong suits. Yeah, you have the one percenters or the few out there that are proactive, right? And that's why they get more proactive results. But on average, for all of us, man or woman, us as a species, we have not done great at taking proactive steps. We are great at resilience and survival. We do our best job when we must, when our backs are against the walls. And we can pick a number of circumstances where you see this, right? I mean, let's look at just a few things, right? Anytime you see two countries, maybe if they go to war or something like that, and you see the biggest boom of things after that war comes out of it, it's because people had to put the pieces together, build themselves back together. Look at a lot of the ridicule and a lot of the things said and all the stress and all the negative things brought to maybe the LGBTQ plus community from all those years ago, and even still some of the challenges they face today, right? And so now we see a lot more acceptance of those things on certain levels. Not saying that the journey's over and that we need to stop, right? But the collective getting together and banding together to fight that fight came out of the need to be resilient, not proactivity, right? And it's the same thing for like women's empowerment movement. We had one point in time where things were heavily weighed in an unhealthy way in men's favor, right? To where a lot of women didn't have rights and weren't being spoken up for and championed for and all the things and mistreated, quite frankly. So therefore, the need was there. And then so the momentum was built. A lot of the groups, a lot of the collaboration, a lot of the supporting, a lot of the getting behind each other as women, right? Sticking together and help lifting each other up to progress. And job well done. Awesome. I love that, right? But notice it came out of the must, not, oh, we just want to do this because, right? Because people tend to band together the best with those who are sharing a similar struggle that's painful enough. And so I'm saying this because if you're wondering, well, hey, why don't men just go do their support groups and all the things outside of them already not being in an energy base that just naturally gravitates towards doing that? The other side goes, well, for so long, right? The setup of culture kind of men didn't have to create such things. They were out there being men. And because the world was more particular in their favor, then they just kind of benefit from that, and they were naturally out there being social. They were naturally bonding and things, and there was less technology and online stuff, and so there was no need to create what was already being accommodated by just the way things were, right? But anything without intentionality starts to waver off, or you lose track or lose sight of the foundation of something or the value in something because you're not actually doing what's required to keep that thing alive. And so what happens is when people start banding together, women start, fighting back, if you will. And I don't want to say fighting back because it's really not a man versus woman, but starting to champion for themselves where the world or society was not championing for them, right? And they started momentum. Then finally, society started listening, started looking. Oh, wow. And now you have so many women, building businesses and out here thriving and all the things, which is such an amazing thing. But there's been no intentionality towards making sure everyone is accounted for, because we tend to focus where people are most oppressed or most in the biggest pain points. And so what happens is this, where yes, there's a lot of, there's been men throughout history and things that have not been doing things in the best manner. They haven't been treating women the best and all that, but they typically tend to represent a smaller percentage versus the whole, the masses of men and people out there. And so for however many or whoever was part of the problem in men, right, and creating the need for women to band together and all these different things, what gets missed is the men out there, even young men, that have nothing to do with the things that the men that we worry about out there in society were doing. And they fall victim to the aftermath, to where, look, there's not even Boy Scouts anymore. There's only Girl Scouts now, right? There's no space for men to just be men in certain ways, right? And to get that support and feel seen, feel heard, all the stuff. And this certain emotional intelligence and all the things aren't really being taught at home. Now, I don't have time in this video, but just to give you some more context, some of the reasons this stuff is shaped the way it's shaped is because we have, a lot of statistics, and I'll get into numbers in another video, but pretty much that most homes are single parent homes now, where the father's not there, the male role model's not there. Now, where yes, it's impactful for a little boy or a little girl to not have their male role model there, statistics have shown a significantly bigger hit to the development of that boy without that male role model versus a little girl. Significant for both, but it's night and day on their ability to both be resilient and still have a successful and productive life from coming from that circumstance. So the very young men growing up into the society that we experience now, that you want to date, you want to have these experiences with, are coming from very troubled, wounded, and lack thereof spaces. Well, not the right, parental figures or archetypes or models to be set for them on how to be men and how to open them, how to, be in tune with your feelings and all the things. And I know I went on a little tangent there just now, forgive me, but I really just want to make sure we grasp this, because whether you're a man out there, a father, what have you, or you are a woman, right? You have to live in this world with the younger generation that is growing up, right? You have to date the men out here currently and all the things, right? And you maybe have a young son of your own that is growing through this world. And so if we don't take heed now and do something, be proactive versus what we usually do when we only take action whenever we must. I mean, look at like global warming and things like that. I mean, think at this point, I don't know how much data we need to know that we're impacting the world in these different ways. And the efforts to significantly change that don't seem to be so proactive until it's a must, right? That's how we tend to operate. So I want you to be aware of this now, so that you can be a part of the solution now, so you don't have to suffer the repercussions or continued repercussions of none of us doing anything or trying to change it. So I want to get into right now a little bit where the ladies have a role in this and what you can do to help. So the first thing you can do is acknowledge the emotional gap with the men you date and you come across, not just the effort gap. And I'm saying this first and foremost as a coach that coaches women mostly, right? I'm always looking to hold men accountable. And I'm always helping to coach women to look out for the right signs and all the things to make sure that she can vet through and pick a good guy. But sometimes in there, what gets lost in translation is a woman can start to look at all men in this like kind of negative light if they're not seeing the effort and saying, oh, he's just a jerk, he's whatever, whatever. And they kind of put the villain tag over top of him. When the reality is most women want a man who's emotionally available and self-aware, but don't realize how few men were ever actually taught how to be that, right? Now, don't think I'm making an excuse to just accept a man that is not emotionally available and not self-aware and all the things, and you just got to put up with it because he wasn't taught these things. No, it's not your job to be anyone's mother or to raise the man that's going to be in your life. It's only your job to inspire that man. But it changes the approach in the way the energy on your end and the state you're in mentally on how you navigate that man whenever you recognize it's not that he doesn't want to show up and put effort into certain ways, but he's literally struggling to. There's a difference in a man that's showing up and he's just, trying to do whatever he wants to do. And he can care less about being a self-aware for you or emotionally available. And he's just there for selfish reasons and wants to use you and all these things. Absolutely. Kick that man to the curb, right? He doesn't deserve your time and your investment to any degree. But there's a difference whenever it's a man that actually has those efforts he wants to put in, right? But maybe he's not the greatest at it, but you can see the foundation there and he's actually working towards it. Like I always say, we don't date potential. We date a man that's already in progress of who he is or saying he's trying to be or whatever he's becoming. So I just want you to be aware of what most men have not been taught that you grew up with. And it's just like breathing air for you most of the time, which is that feminine energy base, that natural organic gravitation towards community, bonding and unity and all the things. And on top of that, most women typically tend to have sisterhood. They have support. They have a safe space. Most men don't. What I'm saying is, if you want an emotionally intelligent man, which most women do and almost require, right? Then recognize how rare that actually is and be sure that you create an emotional safe space whenever you find one who is at least learning when they're already in process of trying to figure it out and grow in that area. And why do you ask? Well, that moves me into the second thing that you can do as to why I'm even saying this. And that second thing is widen your scope. Most women are unintentionally looking at the same 20% of men that all women want, right? And dating apps especially amplify that. Makes it so much more. And where you like it, I love it, right? I'm never going to knock you for your standards and having high standards or whatever you want to say. That's fine. But a lot of you out there are having standards that are not actually requirements for you. Some of the standards are, but there's other components that you actually wouldn't really lose anything at the end of the day if you didn't have it, right? A man that's, making a solid salary, right? Versus making millions or something. Or, a guy that looks pretty good in the face, decent body, but he's not so chiseled and all the things. Things that are actually expendable, things that are not non-negotiables. And if you can't cut off some of the dead weight in your standards, if you have any, if all the things you require is legit, nope, this is what's required for me to be happy, healthy, and whole in a relationship, then hey, you keep staying true to that standard and just make sure you're becoming a version of yourself as a woman that can attract that man, right? If the part of the 20% is all that will work for you, right? But if that's not the case, then now we have to start asking ourselves, where's just some of this extra weight on my standards that are more so blocking me from being able to get to my happiness I want? See, don't let society and what what most people in society and on TV and things are trying to say to you, and the kind of man you should be looking out for, and only entertain this kind of a man or whatever, that you're like, oh, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. But when you think through it, you don't really require that type of a man or that level of man or whatever, right? Get clear on what you actually need and what's not so necessary. Because when you're able to do that, then now you start to open up more options for yourself. Whereas right now, you might be pigeonholing yourself and making it much more difficult to actually find that happiness and happy ever after, because your standards are higher than you even really need them to be for yourself when you're being honest with yourself. Right? Because you got to ask yourself, do I want to wait for this needle in a haystack that I really don't actually need in all the ways that I thought I did before? Or do I want to get to having my happy life sooner? Do I want to be able to have my kids and family and a great husband sooner? Especially if you're worried about the clock and all that stuff and time things. So that means start considering men who are growing, not just the ones who have arrived already. Now, I'm always the first that says, like I said before, you don't date potential. Don't date a man that's just sitting on his hands and he's not having any actions reflect his words and what he's talking about for his visions and his dreams. Or, that says that he's so evolved emotionally and intellectually and all these things, but he shows nothing that supports that, or he's not, taking any steps, right? But if he's actually in process, if he's still on his mission, on his journey and getting there, right? He's putting his money where his mouth is, right? He's taking steps and you can see the path and you can see his momentum, then give that man a chance. Or stop equating boring with emotional stability. So for the men that are decent in their emotions and they're a little more in a, base space, don't write them off because they don't have like that bad boy energy or not super exhilarating up front, right? It means giving more real chances to men without judgment, right? Or before you judge them based off of, off the hype and how just giddy they make you off first rip. Now, look, if you're not feeling drawn to them at all, then okay, it's not your guy. But don't be so focused on how excited they get you, right? How much you feel that tingle up front, at least, because sometimes that tingle comes later, sometimes, or their height, or maybe even the optics of their life, how things look on paper and all the things. And even when it comes to the height thing, look, I'm never going to knock someone for their body preference of their partner or whatever, right? But a lot of times, outside of literal, aesthetic pleasure, right? And you liking the way someone looks and your man just doesn't look right to you if he's not a certain height. A lot of women have value in the height thing because on a primal level, it equates to safety. If I'm going through something, I'm in a rough situation, can this man protect me? And I don't feel protected if I'm with a man that is smaller than me or whatever. That's usually the idea. And okay, fair. That may be true. But ask yourself, if the man in front of you, if he happens to be shorter and he wants to take you out or whatever, does he actually present? Is he a man? Does he seem like he could handle his own? Because look, sometimes it's the shorter guys that actually will show up better than some taller guys, right? There's no specific stats on that or whatever. But the point is, the height thing can become a lot more irrelevant as long as it doesn't have very huge significance in what you require visually versus the practicality of it or the functionality of that height. And so a lot of times we're just conditioned into these things. So just ask yourself next time, if it's a guy that checks off all the other boxes, but he's not as tall as you like, ask yourself, well, why would I not be okay with him being that tall? What would I really be losing? If it's, hey, I just literally wouldn't have a physical draw to him because of this. All right, fine. Not going to knock that at all. Nothing to say about it. But if it's when you think through it and you say, well, actually, I don't know what it would be. I think he could hold his own. He could protect me. I feel safe with him and all these things. Maybe it's not that crazy. All right, but only you can come to that conclusion. But it's a factor to consider because a lot of women are cutting out a lot of options for themselves in great guys because of height. The third thing, and probably most important thing you can do, is be a mirror, not a fixer. You can't save men from their wounds. You never will be able to. And it's not your job to. That's their job, right? But what you can do is model what emotional maturity looks like in practice to the men that you encounter or that are in your life, and challenge them to meet you there, right? See, more often than not, supporting a man is not about you carrying him. It's about you inspiring him with how you show up with a certain standard that he's inspired to rise to if he's ready. All right, now, fellas, let's talk. See, I'm always first and foremost about the accountability of men, especially since us as men, we lead. We're built to be leaders. That masculine energy is great for that, right? Of course, women can lead as well, but masculine energy is what anyone usually leads from when they step into it to lead, right? And that's where we become most equipped. So I'm always going to look towards the accountability of what we can do. I just went on that whole tangent about how women can support men, but it's our mission that we need to be on to support each other and to do better for each other. It is paramount. But the first thing we got to do is build brotherhood beyond banter or silly stuff. And you know how it goes. When you get with your boys, the homies, mostly we connect over sports or jokes, kidding around, right? Poking fun at each other. Surface level stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. Heck, I like and I enjoy that myself. And mostly it's because when we're out there taking on the world and we're working, being busy, going through all the stresses of life, it's nice to just let your hair down and just kind of sit back and just take it easy and keep it light. I get it. But if we never talk about deeper things, we never really check to see how each other's doing, then now it starts creating a problem. Now that isolation feeling and different things like that, because we can tend to be lone wolves as men, right, becomes an issue. Because at the end of the day, real healing begins with emotional honesty first. So instead of us always just saying, oh, you know, how you doing? Oh, yeah, I'm good. You know, whatever. No, really dig in with each other. Start creating that environment. So that means start initiating deeper conversations that hits on something that has deeper substance and significance, right? Something that really matters. That means checking on your boys whenever you notice they're kind of isolating, when they seem like they're being distant. Pop in on them. Hey, you all right? What's going on? You good? No, talk to me. I want to know. You got to let them know, hey, I'm not just light because I'm concerned because you're distant. And when you say you're good, I'm like, okay, and I keep it moving. No, I want to hear it. I'm here for you. We need to hear things like that just as much as women do, right? And you got to start celebrating growth, not just grinding. A lot of times that masculine energy that's about productivity and building and all that, whenever guys or men get together, they usually, are more focused on the success, the building. How do we, elevate and level up together, which is great. That's a great thing men do whenever we all band together and we're focused. But mixed in that, you have to celebrate the inner work as well. The stuff that really is going to be the nucleus that holds up all the things you're building externally. We got to celebrate our homies whenever they have a growth breakthrough or they reach a new level of awareness of something, or, be tapped in emotionally or whatever it is, or discover something within themselves. Like, big that up, clap it up for them. Give it that same energy you do whenever they get that new promotion or whatever, or sign that new business deal or whatever it is. We have to start reinforcing the things that need to be cultivated for us. Second is we got to start inspiring each other to level up, right? See, a lot of men, just like most people, period, but most men wind up sitting or feeling stuck because they see other people around them or stuck or just in comfort zone, right? But whenever one guy that's in close proximity to you sees you evolving and you kind of push the envelope, and then you kind of poking at them and saying, hey, like, what's going on? Let's go, get on your game too. It inspires them to see with their own eyes that more is possible. And it gives them that seed, if they're willing to water it, to be more themselves, right? So I guess what am I really saying in that is that's where we gotta start holding each other accountable, right? You have to be more to inspire your homie to want to be more. And so I guess first it's the accountability of yourself. You can't go and try to make sure your boys are doing well and that you're pushing them to be better if you're not going to be an example of that yourself, right? Steel sharpens steel. You got to be the steel yourself first. So make sure you are rising to the occasion to be a better man for yourself. Make sure you're leveling up. Push yourself. Don't take it easy. Challenge yourself. And I'll say personally for me, I made myself uncomfortable very often to keep pushing myself as a coach, to stretching myself, taking more understandable and reasonable risks, right? Anything that's going to make me a better man, not take the foot off the gas. Keep me going further so I can be more, to do more and serve more, right? And then you turn around and you hold your closest homies accountable too. Now, you can't force them to do anything they don't want to do or rise to the occasion that they don't want to rise to. You can't do anything about that. But you absolutely can be a consistent influence whenever they're in your proximity. And that's something we just don't do often. Or even when you hear your homie saying something that doesn't make sense or sounds a little off or left or like it's not going to serve them, speak up, say something on that. Don't just, okay, oh, yo, you crazy. Well, no. Okay, I hear you. I don't know if that's my thing, but right, like, yes, you want to respect their beliefs, but if it's something that is scratching your artery cords, if this is unhealthy, hey, challenge them on it. That's what we do as men. That's what masculine energy is about. Challenge. You just do it in a healthy way. But yes, press on that with them, right? They need that. And if they get really offended by it or something like that, or they're really off-put by it, well, that's because they don't have enough challenge in their life. Not enough people are challenging them and making them build that brass with that masculine energy that's great with dealing with challenge. So literally be that example that shows them what it looks like to work out, to show up, to speak up, and stay grounded, right? Be the embodiment of that for them, especially if you care about these friends around you. And hell, forget just your friends. When you're out in public, period, as a man, you should be modeling for any man that sees you in the vicinity what it looks like to do it in the most productive way, the healthiest way, the most inspiring way. And the third biggest one, ready for it? You have to stop blaming women and become a man who's ready for one. The dating game isn't rigged. It's just changed. Women aren't too picky. They're just evolving. And you have to evolve and rise with them. You don't have to become one of the 20% of men out there overnight. But you do have to make sure you're becoming a man that is chosen for the right reasons by a woman. Right? No crying wolf out here. Yeah, I went and did a whole thing just earlier in this video about what women can do to help the equation, right? And widen their lenses on their what they're attracted to, or their vetting process or their standards, to make sure that they're not, filtering out men that actually could work for them and all the things, right? But at the end of the day, it's on you to keep leveling yourself up. Hell, you shouldn't be okay not being one of those 20% of men out there for what's within your control. Right? Not saying you have the gun to be the most successful in the world and all these things and you got to do all this stuff. No, but you should always be a man on a mission and a purpose to be better than he was yesterday, to build something, to serve this world in some way that raises your value. That should always be your mission. Not being lazy, not just punching your clock, your 9 to 5 clock, and getting home and just watching TV the rest of the day. Where's the growth, the development, right? You got to stay on your game, so that when it comes to the 20%, you could care less because you are probably naturally a part of it, or it's really hard to not choose you if you don't fit the typical molds of what the 20% is, right? Men don't worry about what the world's going to give them. They worry about what they're going to be able to go take, create, build on their own, attract to them. You have to be polarizing, not want a woman to give you a free pass or just say, well, I feel sorry for you. You want to be a pity choice? No, that's not what we do. You step up. be better, do better, receive better, attract better. The truth is, everyone's hurting somewhere in this dating game. Men feel invisible, women feel let down. But the solution isn't more judgment or placing judgment on whoever. It's accountability, more understanding, and more intentional connection. Both sides have work to do. Now, with that said, I'm always going to lean more of the accountability to do something about a situation on the person in question, because at the end of the day, the only person you can truly rely on is self. The only person that has more power to control your circumstance is you, and what you accept, allow, do not allow, all the things, right? So I'm looking more at men to step up for themselves as men and for each other, right? But at the end of the day, if we can stop pointing fingers at whose side is at fault and all the things, then maybe we can start building more bridges that will start to create more relationships that are worth choosing again. So if you're a man on your journey and you're struggling through some of these processes and things, you feel not seen, and like there's growth to be done for you, and you don't have the support and all the things, and you want to become that best version of yourself as a man that you can be, to start becoming one of those men that a lot of women that follow me, even on this channel and so forth, would love to have as a mate, and you want to be that man that is chosen, right? As you pursue women out there, then email or DM me the word coaching, and we will get to work, only if you're truly ready to put that work in. Let's get it.